Hey everybody, I'm DJ Sixsmith. I'm here with Alex Sherman, CNBC.com media reporter. Disney's Wildest Ride, brand new story from this guy right here. Alex, how you doing?
Happy to be here. It's been a long ride writing this story.
Yes, several months, over a dozen people, over 12,000 words. The story's out. What's the reaction been like so far?
So far, so good. I think it's what I've been happy with is that the story seems to have some crossover appeal beyond just people that love media and love Disney, and those people I think are familiar with what I write in general. And but I'm starting to get a sense that there's enough interest in just sort of thematically the themes of corporate dysfunction and these two leaders at the top of this company that didn't get along personally. Like, there's a lot here that goes beyond just the media industry or even the business industry.
So I want to take everybody inside the story. It's about Bob Iger, Bob Chapek, Disney, a succession plan that did not go according to plan. So let's go through a couple of stories. Let's start with the story about Bob Chapek, his named successor. Bob Iger wants to keep his office.
Yeah.
He has a shower in there. That factors in.
Yeah.
What's that story all about, and who does that tell us more about in that story?
Yeah, so as a ceremonial gesture, the board, the Disney board, went to Bob Chapek and said, hey, what do you think about taking over Bob Iger's office? This will be a changing of the guard. You'll move into his CEO office. But the way the succession structure was set up, Bob Iger was not going to leave the company. He was going to stick around as chairman, executive chairman, for 22 more months. So Iger vetoed the plan, and he said, no, I want to keep my office. I'm not leaving Disney. And there was a practical reason why he wanted to keep this office. There is a private bathroom in the office, and Iger is known to wake up really early and work out. So he'd work out, take a shower at home, come to the office, and then he would have these Disney premiere events and award shows and banquets, and he would take a second shower to get prepared for his night on the town. Chapek, however, is more of an operational MBA type guy. He had no history with any of the Hollywood creative side of the business. And in fact, the way the plan was structured would be that Iger would stick around at Disney very much so that he could teach Bob Chapek that side of the business over the next 22 months. I know all these Hollywood people, you don't. I need the shower, you don't. And Chapek agreed. He was like, you know what, fine. I'll move to a smaller office on the same floor. You keep your office, that's fine. The other part of it is that when Chapek does eventually move into the office, which happens when Iger does leave the company in 2022, Iger's right. Chapek never once uses the shower. So it does speak to these two different men. Like, even when Chapek is actually running all of Disney, he's still not spending a lot of his time in the Hollywood community because it's just not who he was.
Bob Iger, Bob Chapek, two totally different guys, right? And it's funny, when you think about Iger and all this, he's heralded as this great CEO, made all these incredible decisions for Disney. But when it came to picking Chapek as the successor, he told people it was a big career mistake. So what did he miss in all this, and what did he miscalculate?
Yeah, so this speaks to a number of different things. One, there was a vetting issue, and I think it speaks to both Iger and the board. Originally, Bob Iger tells Bob Chapek that Bob Chapek will meet with every member of the Disney board one-on-one in their hometown. This is what Bob Iger did when Michael Eisner named him CEO. It gives the board a chance to ask him any questions that they want. They get to know the CEO a little bit better. It's sort of like The Bachelor, a Disney show, by the way. It never happens because the first time Chapek is told this is 2017. That's how far back he was in line to be the CEO. But Iger at that point renews his contract instead of stepping down because Disney buys Fox, and as a condition of buying, or the majority of Fox, as a condition of that deal, Iger agrees to stay with the company. So what Iger has told people since then is that he too quickly approved Chapek, that he never spoke with employees who worked under Chapek to ask them, how is this guy as a leader?
Seems like a big thing that he
Seems like a big thing.
Yeah.
And he says he vows he will not make that mistake. Again, I've heard from reporting. So the key issue that was missed that may have been able to be picked up if the board had done these one-on-one meetings with him is someone asking Bob Chapek, what would happen if Bob Iger decided to kind of come back and Bigfoot you on this job?
Definitely a lot to be learned for the next time. Let's talk about Bob Chapek, because in your reporting, he told folks that it was 3 years of hell in his role at Disney. So when you think about his time, Don't Say Gay, Scarlett Johansson, some of the misfires there, but then at the same time, what were some of the things that he did well? How do you think about his time in totality at Disney?
So two important things here. One, I think the reason he said that this was like 3 years of hell for me was less to do with the Disney performance and more to do with his own mind telling him that Bob Iger wants his job back and will stop at nothing to get his job back. So some of the good things that Chapek did were he grows Disney Plus very successfully, and the stock really reacts on that during the pandemic. He's able to get the parks through the pandemic. Remember, the cash faucet of Disney was almost completely turned off in those early pandemic months. They generate billions of dollars from the theme parks.
And they had absolutely
that went
nothing.
to zero.
Yeah.
And Disney had just bought this $71 billion acquisition of Fox, so they had like $45 million plus of debt that they needed to pay off, and now had no money coming through the door. So he's able to withstand that. The parks reopened in June, July. Disney Plus really lifts the stock price higher, even while all the parks are shut down and there's no new production. So that's a feather in his cap to realize that he needed to restructure the business around streaming and give investors a reason to buy into the stock, even when the bottom line in terms of revenue looked grim in 2020. So the board rewards him in the end. They do, in fact, extend his contract in 2022. They don't just fire him, even though
Which they could have at that
they
point.
could have
right?
at that point.
Yeah.
He had several communications errors, like you said. The issue with Scarlett Johansson, where they out her salary, which is very un-Disney-like. I go into detail on that in the story.
One of the things I loved about your story is that there are all these amazing moments that you chronicle. So let's talk about the one on the plane where it's Iger, Chapek, stump the CEO, Disney annual meeting. Iger has a certain approach. He's done this before. Chapek is more of a guy who wants to just study all the materials. So why don't you tell the folks this story, and what does this reveal about just foreshadowing that relationship going forward?
Yeah, so some of this story is just how people learn, which is interesting. I mean, many people at Disney told me that Chapek preferred to learn by memorizing. So in this story, this is the Disney annual meeting 2 weeks after the announcement is made that Bob Chapek will be taking over as CEO. So we're talking about March 11th, 2020. That day, people may be familiar because that's the day the NBA shuts down and really coronavirus kind of becomes a thing in the United States. But before that happened, on that day, there's the Disney annual meeting during the day. That happens sort of at night. And on the plane ride over to Raleigh, North Carolina, where this is happening, which is the night before, Iger and Chapek are talking about something that Iger calls Stump the CEO, which is an annual event at the annual meeting where investors ask questions to the CEO, and they can be on anything. So they're unscripted, and some of them can be kind of wild and out there. So the two of them, for like an hour or so, are at the front of this corporate jet talking about potential questions and also just generally like how coronavirus might affect the business. A couple hours into the flight, after the conversation dies down, Chapek goes into the back of the plane where there's a door and a little couch with this big binder of material, because he has learned on that flight that he is going to lead the Q&A. He didn't know this because Chapek had never been to an annual meeting before other than one time as a guest member in his 27 years at Disney.
Wow, and it's like, here you go, you're running the company
So
now.
Iger springs this on him. So he retreats into the back of the plane to prepare for the content questions, because again, that's not the area of the company where Chapek has any familiarity at this point. He's just 2 weeks into the job. So he starts studying about ABC and ESPN, like cramming for a test. Iger is up at the front of the plate wondering, like, why is this guy not running through different role-playing kind of scenarios and saying what questions might be asked, how should we do this? You take this one, I take this one, because they are both up on stage, even though Iger has told Chapek he's going to be the lead. So at some point during the plane ride, Iger goes back to Chapek and is like, hey, you want to run through some stuff here? And Chapek holds up the binder and says, like, well, isn't it all in here? And Iger's like, well, yeah, but like the nuances aren't, just kind of the answers. And Chapek basically says to him, like, I'm good, actually. Like, he doesn't really, I think, say, this is how I learn. But from what I was able to piece together, that is how he learns. Like, he does better if he's just memorizing stuff. And it's one of the first times that Iger realizes maybe this guy is not the guy I thought he would be as my successor.
And the wild part is that this whole thing will happen again, just with different people now. So when you look forward, like you mentioned before, Iger theoretically has learned some things from the past. How do you think succession will go the next time? And do you really think that Iger can walk away after what he was unable to do last time?
That is the $64,000 question here. Overwhelmingly, when I ask that question to past and present Disney executives, mostly past Disney executives, they say to me, I don't think Iger will walk away. He'll either sell the company or he'll stay as long as he can, and different reasons will come up, and he'll just keep pushing and pushing. But he is 72 years old, and from my reporting, he swears that by the end of 2026, he wants to retire. He does not want to be at the company anymore in any capacity. What I'm told is that the likely timeline for a successor to be named is early 2025, and that Iger will do one of two things. He'll either name that person COO, but with the explicit tag that he or she will be the new CEO, or Iger will once again bump up to executive chairman and help this person along for the next, say 22 months. That was about the timeline it was for Chapek, which is interesting because clearly in Iger's mind, and maybe in the board's mind, the problem is not the process. The problem is the person. Whereas you could certainly argue that the problem was the process, and that no person with Bob Iger hovering over them as executive chairman will be able to do exactly what they want because Iger will still be the de facto CEO. I guess the argument there is that what Iger's kind of saying here is that no matter what role I'm in, I'm going to run this company until 2026. And maybe we should just make it more defined. That's why if I were to guess, a betting man, I would guess Iger sticks around as CEO this time and just names someone COO where everyone knows that that person is taking over, because then it will be very defined.
Very
I
clear.
still run this company.
There you have it. That's Alex Sherman. Stories on CNBC.com, Disney's Wildest Ride. Alex, thank you, man.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.